And welcome back, Eva, to our conversation.
Hi, Alina. Great to see you.
Now, again, meeting for a short call and challenges on personal level and on collective level. Maybe it would be interesting also for other people that are listening to us to what is known as the serenity prayer. And maybe you can guide us a little bit in discovering how we can use this prayer in some practical ways to create some more balance in our experiences that we currently go through.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things, Alina. The Serenity Prayer is one of the texts that keeps coming back and keeps coming back to me at different moments in time in my life. And I find it so valuable again. I read it the first time in as a first page in one of the beautiful books of Virginia Satir as a first page, and it was actually not titled with the author who is Niebuhr, and a lot of times people are not really connecting the text to it. It was also used in the AA meetings, kind of as a frame or as a prayer to hold on to really difficult experiences. So Niebuhr wrote this little prayer that is actually saying, and I think there are variations, but the Serenity Prayer says something like, God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to do change what needs to be changed, and then the wisdom to know the difference between the two. And so this is a free version of his words. And I find that so really practical. Right now, we're facing so many things that we may have an opinion about, but it's not in our own power, maybe not in our own will to make the changes that we would like to make. So here's an area of needing to accept. I have a personal example right now. I have a friend who is in this very, very difficult process of realizing and accompanying his mother has a very terrible disease. So she's kind of practically dying in front of his eyes. And it's one of those moments where I guess it's the serenity for him to practice, to accept what is happening in front of him that he's not able to change. Because the reality is the disease is progressively and very fast moving into a kind of almost like a conscious dying process. And acceptance has really become one of the words. We were recently on a nice walk, and we're kind of carving out, how he could deal with that terrible, difficult situation. And so I was offering that to him, and I said, accept the fact that this is happening. But what I also equally encouraged him to do was to take the courage to feel the feelings that he's feeling right now as he is in that process with a loved one, with all the knowing, I want that to be different. So we try to actually move his attention away from fighting against something that he cannot change without his will or with his conscious doing, because it's happening on its own. So accept what is seemingly the unacceptable for him right now, But on the other hand, really finding a courage in feeling his feelings that are appropriate to this process. And so for him, for example, one of the big courages was, or one of the big changes that take courage was to accept that he feels a lot of sadness and a lot of grief that is overwhelmingly intense. And a lot of his learning was it's not as a man okay to feel sad feelings. I should be strong. I should be the one who's figuring it all out and to manage my way through. So for him, it really was a courage, first of all, thought experiment. Then we're doing kind of a bodily oriented movement experiment to give himself permission to feel the feelings that are appropriate to mark this moment. And it was actually very moving to be a witness for him, to see him, like, you know, have his tears running and have a freedom to flow, because it just honored the fact that he's losing something that's very important and dear on many levels. And I think part of the magic that happened there was we created a conversational moment where he could really feel the wisdom, the insightfulness of the difference between acceptance and the courage. And that actually gave him more strength back to even feel a sense of strength in a moment where there's a lot of things happening that is out of his control. And I think that's true for all of us. There are moments where we can't control and we wish. And then it's the interesting balance between what to accept and what to find the courage to change, where we can actually do take actions and know about it.
Yeah, and also find the strength and the courage to even accept what we cannot change. So having these things to balance is something that a lot of times is required from us, even if we don't realize it so often.
Yeah.
Every time we are faced with challenges and we need to make choices, I think somehow on a deeper level that there is some need for acceptance of what currently shows up, what presents itself in the moment. Because I think that if we want to change at any point, that means that there is something that makes us feel uncomfortable, or there is something that we don't want that is manifesting.
Yeah, totally. That's so wise what you say. You know, as you speak, there's a quote from Milton Erickson, the great hypnotherapist and Ericksonian approach, who would say, "What you resist persists," which is the other side, right? What we try to go against, that will actually strengthen itself and that will become more. And that was kind of the insightfulness also in the conversation that I talked with this friend about, that he tried to resist what was something he couldn't willfully control himself, and that created tension. I mean, he actually had a headache. There was a lot of shoulder tension, and the way he described it was, I feel like I'm in this cloud. I feel like I'm in the fog, and what's missing right now is more lightness in my life. And then we just came to the situation, and I guess it was that attempt to resist, and whatever he was resisting, that was persisting, and that was basically creating two forces inside of one body And when two forces are against each other, they create a symptom. They create a conflict, and then that can be played out maybe as a headache, or muscular tension could relate to backache, or whatever that may be. And then I may feel I'm confused. I'm feeling lost. I'm lost in my thoughts. I don't even know. There's so much circling around me. And so you pointed out something so important. It takes so much wisdom and so much courage to actually be willing and able to accept, especially the things that we don't really want to accept. And to me, one of the cultures that we touched upon that does help me to sit with that is from generative change work, where we actually have the four mantras of saying, here's something that I notice happening. Maybe I feel this headache, or I feel a tension. And so basically just offering a place to say, I notice, I'm curious to what happens in the moment right now. Interesting that this is happening. And have a sense, maybe that makes some sense at some level. So I'm sure that makes some sense. And I want to give that, whatever I feel, a welcoming, if you wish, creatively accepting space. Welcome to this headache. Welcome to this backache that is giving me an information. Something is up here that is giving rise to something that's really important to pay attention to. And the way I have been paying attention or trying to deal with it hasn't allowed it to change. So, so maybe with accepting and welcoming, now there's an opening of allowing something to change on its own. So acceptance to me is a practice. It's a willfully act to be with whatever is in a moment without the attempt to control or change it. And that's a practice. It's a piece of art for me to actually accept, especially the seemingly unacceptable. And then it's also, sometimes it's a result. Sometimes we are experiencing a situation where all of a sudden you just notice you're filled with acceptance. And so you're the you're the beneficiary of the result of acceptance. And that can sometimes feel almost like almost like a shower that moves all the way through your body, or almost like oh, I'm in a good place. I feel maybe connected to me and you and the world. And that can be also the result of being in a space of having something fully accepted, and just everything is good for a moment. Those are sometimes golden moments.
Mm. Yeah, and I think they are really valuable. They are really moments to treasure, that we can remember and maybe replicate in other situations where we are called for acceptance. We are called to manifest and to accept things, even just for that glimpse of a second. But it's that insight, it's that spot that can change everything, even if we don't do anything in that specific moment, but can change, for instance, a headache. Once we shift for an instant the attention or the perception, the headache can instantly disappear. So maybe that was just a trigger to remind us of something, and once we tapped into that space, its mission was accomplished, and there was no purpose for it to be there anymore. And that's just an example. And I loved what you said about resistance and how um, resisting something makes more powerful that thing and keeps it in the same place and prevents us for doing something different. So prevents us actually from changing things.
Yeah.
And as I was hearing you saying that, the word revolution came to my mind, because a lot of times we say that we need a revolution to take place so that things can change. And I was thinking, how about um, using not really revolution, but an evolution to change things.
Hmm.
So not replacing one thing with another that is already familiar. So acting from the same space of consciousness, as Einstein said, that you cannot solve a problem with the same knowledge that created the problem. So you need to access something beyond that, and maybe we need some evolution to do that.
Yeah, I love that quote, and it's yeah, it's so on the point. What the image that also just came to me as you were using your explanation, your quote. There's a in Aikido, there's actually an exercise that you do that is called rock and river, and it's a really cool practice where somebody is using a force against against you, so trying to push you off balance. So it's a little game where you try to be pushed off balance. And the funny thing is, usually the natural biological tendency is you kind of like putting your whole force against the other, so it's like one force against the other. And I think that's really kind of our biological response, like, oh, here's a force, I got to go against it, fight for my right or something like that. And in the rock and river, what we actually train people to do is that you're almost kind of like meeting the force, you're kind of going towards the force, and allow that meeting point to connect to your own center. So actually using the force as a way of balancing yourself more, which sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but and it does need a little bit of coaching. Usually the immediate response is a different one. So I as a coach, I will usually guide people to say, try to with curiosity meet the force that is seemingly pushing against you. You meet it, you take a nice breath, and then you want to have the breathing out travel all the way down to the earth, so that you can also sense you grounding yourself more and use the force as a positive force to allow yourself to be more balanced and centered. And then we kind of keep doing that and rehearsing and practicing it. And then if that is an established new skill, then we will do, after the rock, we will do the river. So somebody's pushing you a lot more and with big surprises. And then what happens as a next phase is you will actually kind of move with the movement to establish a new dance or a new balance. So the river is kind of flowing with the movement, and it's a aikido way. So you're harmonizing the energy that comes towards you in order to use it in your own interest and in your own direction. That is a new skill. We usually don't have that in our biology. A force comes, we push against it. We're trying to oppose an energy, and the acceptance is kind of a creative, active act to go with an energy and be using it in a positive way. And a lot of times people have a really delightful experience, and it's almost like, aha, it's something new. When I teach in the cleaning company, my leadership communication workshops, I usually have them do a game where again they're pushing each other away. And I usually put words to, like, maybe an employee says, oh, I don't want to do this type of cleaning. Why am I supposed to do this? Why not the other person? And then the leader is saying, yes, I'm telling you so, so you got to do it. And so we're playing this game like one force against each other, and they're not moving anywhere. And then what I'm asking them to do is then, as a next version, have the hands push each other away, but the one who is basically the leader is beginning to go backwards. So it's using whatever it's saying against the leader, saying, no, I don't want to do it. And then have as a translation to say, oh, I hear you don't want to do it. I'm sure that makes sense. Can you tell me more how that gets triggered? So rather than saying, yes, you got to do it, it's your duty, asking a how question, how they come up with that idea, which is almost like I'm taking this force as a feedback that I take in order to investigate a little bit more further about what is the no telling me, and what is that expressing an important need, or an important conversation that we need to have between the two of us. So we play these little games, and usually if you do physical activities, it really clarifies the idea, because again, it's counterintuitive to what we usually do. Somebody's giving me a force, I want to force back. And then we start to translate that, and that is opening really a courage to say, why should I go backwards? Like, there's also the idea, like, I'm giving in. And I said, no, you're not giving in, you're moving with. You're accepting the feedback you get, and that takes courage to change the pattern of what you have usually tried. Why we do that? Because before it didn't work. So how about we try something new?
Yeah, and it's an interesting way of discovering and of communicating and relating to how one feels about certain situations and certain engagements. Yeah, that's very insightful. Thank you for sharing us this these practices, and thank you also for the idea of bringing into the space the serenity prayer and the value that it can bring to all of us. And looking forward to seeing you next time.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. It was great.